Welcome to the How To Home Podcast, presented by FilterBuy. I'm your host, Aaron Massey, a DIY home improvement enthusiast and full-time content creator running MrFixItDIY.com. Alongside me is my co-host, TRACY Pendergast, a home and lifestyle blogger operating her website, HeyTracy.com. Each week, we'll cover the real-world ups and downs of owning a home, answer your questions, and if we don't have the answers, we'll talk to some experts to help you get the most out of your remodel, repair, and home improvement projects. So without further ado, let's start the show. My name's Aaron Massey, and welcome back to another episode of the How To Home Podcast. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, TRACY Pendergast. Our guest today is EILEEN'S, who is a real estate agent as part of Keller Williams here in Los Angeles with over 15 years of residential real estate experience. So thank you so much for being here. We are very happy.
Thank you.
Looking forward to all the information that you can share with us in the audience.
Here. Thank you.
On today's episode, we are going to talk about the ways to maximize the return on your investment when it comes to doing some renovations on your home and some tips for what to expect if you're deciding to maybe list your home for sale in the next couple years. So we're going to talk about those things today. But before we get into that, I just wanted to remind the audience that if you guys want to call in and leave us a voicemail, you can do so at any time. We can try our best to incorporate your questions into the show. So please call us at 978-709-1040. You can leave us a voicemail about any range of DIY or home improvement topic. And we also, before we dive too deep into things, we want to thank our founding sponsor of the show, which is FilterBuy. FilterBuy is a leading manufacturer of HVAC filters right here in the U.S. They manufacture everything here locally in the U.S., and they're a family-owned business.
Not only do you save 5% when you subscribe, but all orders ship free within 24 hours. Boom.
And they're really easy, super easy to sign up. You just go to filterbuy.com. You can input your air filter sizes, which you can find on your furnace, depending on the system that you have. And you can set how frequently you want them delivered, so you never have to remember to change your filter or go, set a reminder. They just show up to your door when you should replace them. You can swap them right in, and they'll show up on whatever frequency you want. I've signed up for it myself, and they show up every 3 months, so I can just change them out. So, Eileen, give us a little bit of your background. How did you get into real estate? And tell us a little bit of all things Eileen.
My husband and I were buying investment properties outside of California, and I felt myself not knowing if I could trust the realtor. We were using fax back then, and they would fax tons of contracts. And I said to my husband, I'm going to take some classes, so if we continue to buy property, I'm going to know what we're doing, even though they're in different states. So I started taking classes, absolutely fell in love with it. And so I've been doing that since about 2003.
I pulled some quick facts, and we're going to see if you agree with all of these.
Okay.
According to OfferPad.com, the 7 projects that get the most bang for your buck are refreshing interior paint, kitchen and bathroom remodels, updated attic insulation, the removal of popcorn ceilings, updated lighting, upgraded landscaping, and updated plumbing. And then one more fact we have is this. According to Remodeling Magazine's report, the average recouped costs for remodeling projects was less than 60%. So for the most part, they found that the less expensive projects generally have a higher return on investment. And the more expensive projects tend to cost more with less return.
How do you feel about that? Do you agree with those?
Most of them, not all of them. For me, the popcorn ceilings, not that important, and the insulation, at least here in our part of the country.
You don't feel like those play that big of a role in the buyer's minds?
I don't. In fact, the insulation really doesn't come up unless the inspector happens to mention it in the sit-down.
And then in terms of spending more time on less expensive projects that just give a quick facelift, would you agree that that's
a better idea? Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. And less time.
Obviously, there's a lot involved in buying and selling homes. And, as a DIY guy, I bought my first home about, 4 years ago now. And it was a total fixer-upper. And the realtor that I was dealing with at the time, she just kept telling me how thankful she was she found me as a buyer because I'm this handy kind of hands-on guy. And she's like, this house was not ready for sale. And you came along and were willing to overlook a lot of things. And
right.
Now I'm kicking myself for having done that. But right now what I'm trying to do is, I don't know if we're going to be there forever. So the work that I'm doing, I want to make sure I'm maximizing the return on the investment that I'm putting in, like making sure I'm spending the money to target the areas that we can recoup down the road. And I'm just not sure what those best areas are. So I thought we would talk a little bit about that today. And then should, we want to sell a home, or should somebody want to sell a home, some of the things that you need to consider and how to put yourself in the best position to sell.
It kind of depends on a timeline. So these tips are going to be someone who's probably less than a year out. The number one thing you can do is paint. It's very inexpensive. You can do it yourself. You can hire, but fresh paint throughout a house, I see it all the time. It changes the whole vibe of the home. So if you only had to do one thing, I would do fresh paint. Make sure the house is clean, spotless, even if it's you or a professional crew. I don't think it would be more than $250 to get a couple people in there for 2 days, fresh and clean. And declutter, which also is depersonalizing. So you're probably moving anyway. So clean out those closets, take down those photos, put them in storage, preferably off site. Longer term, kitchens and baths are huge to buyers. And I would say number one would be kitchen. So if there's anything you can do, depending on your budget, to freshen up the kitchen, that's where I would put my money. Even if it was painting cabinets. I've seen a lot of dated wood 80s, 90s cabinets. If you freshen those up, I think you'd see your return immediately.
So you're touching on dated cabinets a bit. What are your thoughts when you're remodeling a home about doing things that are more on trend? Can they actually hurt you when you go to sell the house?
If they're too trendy, they can hurt. When a buyer comes into a property, they'll usually have an immediate reaction to that trend, yes or no. My daughter asked me this morning what I meant by trend. So a French door is classic. So you're probably not going to, you probably will be okay with that French door. So if it's too trendy, too personal, it could be something as silly as a cabinet door that's the shape of a lightning bolt. You should stay classic with finishes. So too trendy, yes, it could hurt you.
So
Absolutely.
One thing that, going back to your point on paint,
Yes.
from my experience, my father was a real estate broker for a number of years. We always would paint things pretty much when we were going to sell, like various shades of white, like kind of to brighten up the space, I guess.
It's still happening.
Still happening.
It's still happening.
So
yes.
Is the thought behind that you want kind of more of a neutral palette,
Yes.
so that people can come in and see what they...
Yes, they want to picture themselves there. Same with depersonalizing. They want to come in because if they are going to paint, paint's not expensive for the new buyer either. So if they want that yellow kitchen or dark accent wall, they're not worried about spending that once they close. So fresh in the white family, absolutely.
That's why I love white subway tile too. When we were looking at homes, I was so drawn to the homes with the white subway tile in the kitchen and the bathroom because again, it's a blank slate and you can imagine all of your things in that
Did you do it? Did you use it?
Yes, I did. We did use it and we're about to use it again. So far we have paint, we have clean up, depersonalize.
What about exterior paint? Do you find that?
Sure. It depends on your budget.
Yeah.
So that could be anywhere from $3,000 to $15,000. So it depends. A little shortcut would be power washing, and you could do that in a day for probably under $800 with a professional.
Yeah,
So if
so
you
as
can't
long as the
paint,
paint's in
I've
decent
had
shape, not
sellers
peeling or stuff like that.
All
Yes.
the stucco would probably just fall off my house if we power washed it right now. I swear.
And then
Oh,
address
man.
the landscaping. You know,
Yeah.
you mentioned outside landscaping. Curb appeal's huge. I've hosted opens where cars slow down when they see the sign, and based on curb appeal, they'll keep going or come in.
Yeah.
And landscaping doesn't have to be expensive if you start early enough.
We're talking about, those are kind of more urgent types of things, right? If you're looking to sell maybe in the next couple year or two.
But longer
term, you would say kitchens and bathrooms?
Kitchens and baths. And then in our neck of the woods, an indoor-outdoor feel to the yard, to entertaining. So maybe that is popping French doors that make sense in the back of the house, off maybe a bedroom, preferably a family room. So indoor-outdoor feel is important to today's buyers.
How important are windows and doors?
Classic doors, French doors, it depends on the style of the home. Windows can make it feel dated. Some of my windows in my house are the jalousie, the louver windows, and they make my Spanish home feel very dated. But windows can be very expensive when done right. So I'm kind of neutral on it because a buyer can solve that later
Right.
in their own way.
I don't know necessarily that, like, if you put in new windows per se,
You'll get your money
are you
back.
going to get that money back? Because they are expensive. And if you're adding a bunch of them around the house, are you really going to be able to offset that cost? Maybe, if you're doing it in stages, I think, over time,
Which is what I did.
yeah, you could do that.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to, like, okay, I'm going to list this house next year and I need 25 new windows and I'm expecting that cost to
You might not get it back.
return, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think you would get that back.
And when you do your windows and doors and floors, don't go cheap. I walk in and see Pergo or just fake floors, and I just want to walk right back out.
What would you recommend? Are people, like, at least in this area, just are people interested in hardwood mostly?
Hardwood. And if it's the original hardwood, and if it's in the budget for the seller, I would have them refinish it. And if there's carpet, which there often is, people installed it in the 60s and 70s, you may have saved the original hardwood underneath. You've protected it for years. Pull up the carpet and let buyers see there's hardwoods under. Whether or not you finish it is up to you as the seller, but at least they know the hardwoods are there. I'll take hardwoods all day over any new Pergo fake wood flooring.
So would you say those tiles that look like wood are a trend that maybe...
They are.
Okay.
I don't like them.
No?
No. They might work in certain kitchens. I don't like them, but I'd rather have the original floors if possible, or just spend the money there.
Yeah, speaking of floors, so when I remodeled our master bedroom, I found the original hardwoods underneath. I had asked the previous seller if there was hardwood underneath, and he said no.
Wow.
And I pulled it up, and technically, I guess it's not hardwood, it's Doug fir,
Okay.
but it's Doug fir tongue and groove subfloor from the 30s, which
Was when it was built?
is when it was built. So it's the original subfloor. But I refinished it. Somebody
probably
had painted
beautiful
it.
now.
Yeah, somebody had painted the floor, and then they had carpet on top of that. And I just refinished it, restained it, and I love it. It's got a lot of character. It's a little soft. It's Doug fir, which is a softer wood,
Right.
so it can scratch up a little bit. But because it's old and because it's dated, and the house is kind of rusticky anyway,
It's got the character.
it's got a good character feel. So I
keep
really like
a
it.
screwdriver in my car, so if I can, I'll go to a closet and pull up a little corner
Yeah.
to see I'm surprised they didn't know there was wood under there.
Yeah, and I think because he had pulled up an area and there was like a piece of plywood under a section of the floor.
He just
but
assumed the rest.
It was, yeah, I think he just
well,
assumed.
bonus for you.
Yeah, I know. I was like because I thought I was going to peel up the carpet
I'd
and
be
have to
happy.
buy some kind of flooring to put
Yeah.
down. And fortunately, I
Instead-
didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
So,
We just have carpet on top of a concrete slab for half of our downstairs.
Did you put the carpet in?
No.
Okay.
No. And it's about to be rolled up and thrown in the dumpster in about 2 weeks. And
You
I've
could
never been so
also
excited.
finish the concrete. Might be
Yeah.
kind of cool and put some throw rugs down.
That would be
I
cool.
like that look.
So on average, we've talked about all these things that you could do. On average, what would you say a typical homeowner spends to get their house ready to sell?
Right off the bat, I would say between $5,000 and $10,000. And I've surveyed a few realtors this week, and we're right in line. And it might be a Southern California thing, but up to $10,000
and those
getting it
things
ready.
included in that would be like the little repairs maybe that need to go on around the house. The
For
paint, the
sure.
cleaning.
And speaking of the little repairs, it is important to take care of those. And that might be light bulbs, cleaning your AC filters, hinges. If the buyer sees that you're taking care of those, they assume you're taking care of the rest of the house. So for very little money, I would absolutely fix those. A new trend I'm seeing also is sellers doing a pre-inspection. So for $300 to $700, they may get a pre-inspection. They know the bad news. They have the report, and then they can go through and address any of those small fixers, bring in a handyman to address them, and or give that report to the future buyers and let them know what's wrong with the house.
That's
So-
a
keep it
great
secret.
idea, especially when you're buying a house and it's contingent on you selling yours, so you're in that time crunch.
You'll know.
That's great.
You'll know what's wrong. And the seller may say, as is, and here's the report. And you can still do your own inspection.
Right.
But it takes away some of the anxiety, and buyers ask for less credits if they know up front what's wrong with the house.
For those maybe not familiar, a pre-inspection is just a regular home inspection, but
Absolutely.
instead of the seller maybe paying for the inspection, or the buyer paying for the inspection,
The seller does.
the seller pays for it.
Yes. And most people will do it. They'll listen to my advice. Sometimes I'll have an older person who doesn't want to know. Just no.
Yeah. Well, I never really even thought of that. But then I could also see a buyer maybe coming in and being like, okay, maybe this was a friend of yours. So some people may want to do another inspection of their
I
own and bring
encourage
in
them
their own
to.
people.
Absolutely. Bring in a contractor or another inspector and compare the two reports. Disclose. The seller should tell all.
Yeah.
So what are the hardest types of homes to sell for you? What are issues that
We can go back to location. So if it's on a busy corner or a busy street or next to a gas station or train tracks or a business and sometimes a school, they're a little bit harder and you have to price it accordingly.
I think nationally we're in a bit of a seller's market, right? At
I think
least
we're coming
locally,
out of that.
coming out of it.
Yes.
How do you package homes in an enticing way to sell in a market that maybe isn't as favorable?
So back to the basics, clean, declutter. If you can afford staging, and there are different levels of staging, I would stage the house and price it correctly and maybe even underprice it slightly to get more buyers interested. So it's important to come out strong right away, first impressions. So I would not overprice it. I would try to be better than all the competition. And I would look at the competition with your realtor. Like I will take sellers out to see. It's so concrete. Come with me on open houses. I'll show you these 4 houses that compare to your house and why yours is better or worse. So pricing it correctly will help you sell it faster.
So there are obviously a lot of expenses that are kind of adding up that can be overwhelming to people that are trying to sell their home, maybe because it's a financial situation.
Right.
Something I know a lot of people are doing now, they're staging, and then also professional photos, having someone come in and get professional photos of your house. Do you think that's another expense that is important?
So that's an expense I take on as the realtor. It is one of the most important factors in marketing the home. And unfortunately, probably a quarter of our realtors will still take iPhone photos. It's not fair. I can get a decent photographer between $200 and $300. That's money well spent to make your home look great and slightly edited. We're not removing phone lines and fake backgrounds. We're not allowed to do that, but that's where I put my money first as a realtor, and I pay for that. The seller doesn't have to.
Let's talk about, you mentioned staging a few times. What are we talking about when we're talking about staging?
I have different levels of staging. So if you were to move out and hire a stager, say a 3-bedroom, 3-bath home, it could be anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000. There are a lot of stagers. There's a lot more competition now. Prices have gone down over the years for staging. You could work with what you have. So maybe you've moved out, but you've left your beds and your nightstands. I would walk through the house and tell them what would work and not work. So that would cut your staging budget down as a seller. So you could do it for a little bit less. I, as a realtor, bring in another realtor friend. We go through the house. So if you have almost no budget, we'll go through the house together with a clipboard, make a checklist for what you can do for very little money. It's kind of like the seller staging. And sometimes it's bedding and towels and curtains and plants. So it really depends. But I always see whatever you spend, I believe you get your return back.
What if I want to sell my house, but in order to buy a new house, I have to sell this house? So I'm still living in the home. How can I go about that? How can I sell and kind of stage it, but not having moved out?
So selling and buying at the same time are already tricky. I would just have them declutter and maybe take half their stuff off. You know, there's storage bins, those storage trucks, they'll take them away. So pull half the stuff out, still keep it clean. It's doable. You won't get the same as if you'd moved out, I believe. It's done all the time, all
That's
around.
what we did.
Yeah,
It
you
is.
just do
it's
what
hard.
you can. It's really hard, and I try to work with the sellers and their schedule. If there's children and pets, you just make it happen and keep the opens on Sundays so you're getting it ready right before the open. And maybe, Wednesdays and Fridays we'll have showing. It's hard, but it's doable.
And I can imagine the pets thing is another angle with like pet smells and...
Oh, yes. You have to be very careful. This I sometimes forget about, but smell's important. If I go in and it smells like smoke or trash or weed.
Who knows what?
Pets, anything. It's a big turnoff. And sometimes you don't know right away why you don't like the house and you leave and you're like, oh, it was the pet smell. So be careful.
Is there a home that you can think of off the top of your head or a property that maybe you got approached to sell in the past that was just like, this is going to be a hard one for me?
I'd have to say no, because if it's priced right, it will go, especially in our area. So it's all about pricing.
Is there any, like, have you ever had a homeowner who was just like really, not responsive to your suggestion as far as like what something should be priced?
Oh, all the time. It's always worth more than their comps. We call them comps, comparables, all the time. So in that case, I may take the listing and show them and tell them after 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to need a price adjustment. And sometimes you have to let the listing go if they're not going to listen to you.
It's probably hard in a situation like your house, Erin, where you've put in so much hard work, where if someone comes in and tells you what it's worth, you're like, oh no.
Well, yes and no. In a way, like for me, I kind of know, like, there's no way I'm going to get back what I'm putting into it because of, if I tried to equate my time in terms of the sweat, blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into it and the equity and all that type of stuff. Like if I try to look at it from that perspective, I would never be able to like price it, to sell, in my opinion. But
depends on the market too.
Yeah. And I think I have the ability to kind of disconnect from that. And I'm just like,
that's good. That helps when you're not emotional.
I'm just trying to get it to the point right now where I can walk through it and be like, not just stare at every little thing that still needs to be done, So, and we don't have any plans, at the moment to sell the house. So we're going to be there for a little while. So I'm just trying to get it to the point where we're comfortable in it and also thinking about, should we want to sell it down the road? I don't want to put all this money into something I know I'm not going to get back.
Right.
You could also keep it as a rental.
Yeah, I was just
big picture
ask you about that.
Yeah.
You could.
Yeah, but then you have to have too much money to buy something else, which I don't have.
Yeah.
Yet. Yeah.
So for someone like Erin or me too, where we're kind of not sure if it's going to be our forever home or maybe, it's kind of like up in the air. What things do you suggest you don't do to a house that you might potentially sell? Like which trends or which upgrades do you think are probably not a great idea?
Maybe something that's personal. Maybe you've picked a crazy tile that reminded you of your honeymoon, something too personal where it's going to be harder for someone to undo later. I would put my time and energy maybe in expanding the house if possible. I mean, that's a huge budget, but adding a bed and bath.
What about like, I know on HGTV and DIY networks, a lot of shows now, everything is open concept kind of and modern.
Yes.
And there's a lot of work involved in changing, certainly in older homes, because the open concept feel wasn't really a thing. There was rooms, dedicated for specific things. And so I kind of go back and forth on that a lot between kind of the way I look at my kitchen. I haven't done my kitchen yet, and it's straight from the 80s. Was the last time it was touched, and it's very dated. It's kind of going to be my next big project, I think. And based on what you're saying, maybe it should have been an earlier project because of the return on the investment side of things. But I keep waffling between the idea of opening it up to the dining room and kind of the living room, or just kind of leaving it as it is and updating it. So
I'm so scared to hear this answer.
I know, because you're kind of going through the same thing.
We're about to knock out a wall.
So open concept has been pretty popular for the last 5 or 6 years. I think it's a trend that's going to die out in the next 2 or 3. I like my rooms. I don't know what I like rooms. I am okay with opening a kitchen to the dining, especially if you have small children and you want to put in that breakfast bar and you see them, while you're cooking. I'm okay with the kitchen to dining room, but I feel like, and this is really just me, in 3 or 4 years, we're going to go back to rooms. Sorry.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. So that's
Well-
okay. I actually just read an article recently that was saying that the whole open concept trend is really a reflection of how we're working as a society right now with our children, and kind of the helicopter parenting and always having to keep an eye and not giving freedom. And it's funny because one of my big reasons was I could be cooking or doing whatever I needed to do and be able to see the kids in the backyard. And I was like, it is a good point. And it could.
So I'm not a helicopter parent, so I want my daughter in another room doing her homework. And if I have to go in there to help her, I will. So I think maybe a modified version. But younger millennials do want open. They come in and they knock on the wall to see if it's load bearing, to see if they can knock it out. And me personally, I like my rooms.
For the record, that's not how you determine if it's load bearing or not.
Oh,
but
you
that's
don't?
okay.
That's what they all do.
You're welcome to knock on the
I
wall.
put a glass
I'll
to
call
it.
you.
Hello, are you load bearing?
They do. They go boom, 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 right across.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck
Soup
with that.
cans were too.
If it sounds empty, it's just because it's empty. It's not because it's not load bearing.
Oh my goodness.
So is there anything, I guess, any surefire like things that will 100% get you your return back if you're investing in something? Kitchens 99% of the time, would you
Yes.
say? New appliances type thing?
Yeah, new appliance, matching appliance. Even if it's like at the start of the show, even if we talk about painting cabinets, just to freshen it up. Definitely address the light if it's in your budget. And that could be, again, popping in a French door. It could be a skylight. I think solar tubes are kind of dated, but bringing light into certain parts of the
So
house.
natural lighting, trying to...
If you can. And I think recessed lighting's overdone, personally. I've sold a couple houses where, the recessed light was every 3 feet. I don't get it. So, maybe 4 in a room. But buyers do look for a light-filled home when I take them out.
I think
So if
that
you
kind of
can
goes
address
back
that.
to the neutral paint palette, right?
Yes.
It's about bright. It's about kind of like bright and inviting versus dark and dingy. So that makes sense. From
Yeah,
that
and dark and
perspective, I think.
dingy sounds dirty.
Yeah, it sounds dirty.
Absolutely.
Bright and light sounds
Clean. Yeah.
fresh.
And I know people go back and forth. Some people don't like a lot of overhead lighting. I personally do. I prefer to have like more light that I can
I like the option.
that I can dim, as opposed to like I have to have lamps on everywhere.
You have to go like this to see if your meat's cooked.
Well,
That's what I have to do.
I recently stayed in an Airbnb type place that is relatively new, and it high ceilings and the whole thing, and it's pretty nice. But I was like, where are the lights? Like I'm looking around for light switches, and there's no overhead light. And I was like, this is crazy. Like at night, it's like these bulbs, they're like, this is what you're putting off. And I'm like, I can't see anything. It's
And we
driving
do
me
find
nuts.
them in the Craftsman and the Spanish, the 1920s or earlier. We do find that a lot.
Yeah.
So I think you would and could add lighting in that situation. Just don't overdo it.
Yeah, our house is very much like that. We, like I said, it was from the 30s. So there was not a lot of overhead lighting, just mostly like ceiling fans that had been added after the fact. So like one central kind of light.
Which you could make. It's also a light.
It is a light,
Okay.
yeah. So that was like the main light in most of the bedrooms. And I kind of so I have 2 switches in most of the bedrooms now, where it's like one is the ceiling fan light in the center of the room and the ceiling fan. And then I also have, which you hate, recessed lighting. But
I like
do,
some.
yeah, I put them mostly, I tend to kind of target the corners
Okay.
where it's like it kind of fills onto the walls and bounces through the room, but it's not like,
And you still have your center light
and
anyway.
you still have the center light if you want a little less light plus the fan.
What
So
about sconces? Do you like sconces?
I have some wall sconces in the hallway of my house, which is the worst. Talking about the solar tubes that you mentioned before.
Yeah.
I've actually considered putting a few down this hallway because it follows the ridge line of my home and bedrooms on both sides. So there's zero natural light in there. And it's ugly at night. It's dark. And I've been trying to consider ways to like punch it up without putting, recessed lighting all the way down. And I had considered maybe putting a couple, because even during the day, it's really dark.
For listeners that might not know, the solar tubes are the skylights that go all the way up.
They go up through the
Through
attic.
the-
There's like a reflective tube that goes, up through your attic, and on the top is like a dome, like a instead of a big skylight that's like a rectangle, it's more of like a bubble dome that goes on, and it's a smaller footprint than a big skylight. And it, the light captures in through the bubble dome, bounces down through the reflective coated tube and then spills out. And they have them now with built-in LEDs as well, so that during the day you can have natural light, and then at night you can flip a switch and turn them on like normal light. And so a lot of them are actually solar. Those ones are solar powered. So during the day they can be powered.
Oh, that's great. Is that your next project? Maybe.
I don't know.
Pretty cool.
I keep going back and forth on it because it does. I mean, you got to drill a hole in your roof. Then also, depending on where they go, you lose that attic access to get through there because you have the tube going through. So it's something to consider as options. But like you're saying, if you think that they're going to be
add value,
if they're not going to add value, then maybe you shouldn't. And also, if they're going to make the space feel dated, then maybe you shouldn't. But I think for me, the benefits might outweigh the detractions, because I just think there may be a better option than trying to put in the recessed lighting
all the way down
the center.
Right.
I actually always wonder about the actual solar panels as well, because obviously they're very efficient. They serve a great purpose, but they're not super attractive. Buyers
Try to hide
can
them
take them down,
sometimes.
but you put them on the back of the house.
Yeah, if you can. And right now, buyers don't care whether it's got solar or not. I think they will soon.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm like, I would 100% want that, but I think it's buyer specific. I really don't care about what the roof looks
Aesthetic.
like if it's offsetting my energy costs, but that's my personal preference, I suppose. For me, I'm like, yeah, if I'm going to lower my energy bills by having solar on the roof, absolutely. And I think California is now having a mandate that new constructed homes have to have it.
And they have solar roofing materials too. I'd be interested in that. I have a Spanish
Tesla
home.
solar roofs.
Next time I have to do a roof, I would look into that.
So looking at selling a home, in the future, what are the factors that come into play when pricing? I know a lot of that falls on your plate to then dictate that back to the seller.
So when I meet with a seller, I bring comps, which are comparable homes within hopefully a quarter square mile and similar sized homes, because that's how a bank appraiser will look at it. So maybe within 20% up or down. So if you have 2,000 square feet, I try to keep it as close to your type home. I will sit down with the seller and go through comps. And if they want, I will show them their competition. So they can come out with me. I caravan houses on Tuesdays. I go to open houses on Sundays. If they want, we'll go look at other houses and I will say, this is why this house is worth more or less than yours. I can also, I'll give them a range. So if we're down to the price range and we're about to put it on the market, I will ask 6 to 8 realtors to come take a survey, and I'll open the house for an hour and give them 3 or 4 questions about the house so that we can narrow down the price. And this is, 6 or 8 realtors who potentially have buyers. So between all of us, if we're local and we know the inventory, and we should, I can narrow down a price with the seller. And then I try to slightly underprice it to get more buyers in there. So that's my strategy.
Sounds like you should get a little backdoor meeting going on with all the realtors and drive the price up like the mafia.
Oh, right.
Like, hey,
but if
this
the buyer
is what we're
won't
charging
pay
now.
Exactly.
It's LA. People will pay anything. If you had 5 things that a seller could do to sell their house fast, what would those be?
Clean, paint. You can do it yourself. You can hire. Declutter. So maybe that goes with cleaning. I would address the landscaping and the curb appeal and the lighting.
And the staging, or no? Would that be 6?
That would be
that's
6.
Like decluttering.
That might be
staging.
declutter. That'd be 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you say the average person should consider maybe spending anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 to cover those bases?
Yes. And it depends where you live because real estate's local. But yeah, you should hopefully have some kind of small budget. And I do think if you follow these, I think you'll get your money
You'll get that back.
and sell faster because it's stressful.
Because
you
otherwise
want to be done quickly.
you're probably going to take that hit on the listing price, right? At least probably. If you're not addressing those things,
You will.
you'll take at least a $5,000 to $15,000 hit
Yes.
when the seller comes
Or
in.
it'll
It's like,
sit longer. And if you're buying a house, you might have 2 mortgages.
Time is
It's
money.
not fun.
Yeah.
What is the absolute most inexpensive outdoor curb appeal upgrade people can do, in your opinion?
Really inexpensive, just 2 really colorful, beautiful pots at the front door.
Okay. Frame.
And it
so
helps
frame
my-
out the entrance.
Frame out the entrance, and it helps the photos pop.
I've heard that like painting the front door
Sure.
is a big thing.
And you could do some fun colors because it's just paint. So if they don't like the red you've picked, they can change it, the day after they close.
Hopefully, unless they paint over like a really nice wood door.
Oh,
and then
man.
that makes
Oh,
me
that would be a
cry.
crime. No,
Yeah.
no, 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 no.
I've seen it.
Yep.
Oh, no.
So a lot of homeowners, a lot of DIY people tend to do a lot of interior improvements and do stuff or improvements, I air quote, without permits, without, they're just doing stuff themselves. Does that inhibit ability to sell versus, going through the
Short
necessary
answer
permitting?
is no.
No.
Should they? Yes, they should get a permit. It costs more. It takes longer. More than half of the properties in the area I sell have unpermitted space. And we just tell the buyer, take it or leave it. We'll go and try to pull permits. If it's not there, do you want it? We'll move forward. And if it scares you, you're out. They usually move forward.
So I have in the back of my home, there's kind of this L-shaped covered patio, I guess, kind of what it is. It's an addition. It was not permitted. So in terms of addition, though, you can't, if it's not permitted, you can't include that in the selling
Right.
price
Square
for
footage.
the square footage.
Right.
So my home technically is like around 3,000 square feet with that thing. But in terms of the purchase price or the selling price of it, it's only 2,700. Right?
So as a realtor, I'd go with the 2,700. And then in my marketing or my agent private notes or conversations I have with other realtors, I would let them know about that bonus space. And
So
buyers,
it's a bonus space.
Bonus,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Is it enclosed?
It is enclosed. Yeah.
It's
and
great.
Now it's,
and
now
buyers
it's,
want it.
Now it's technically a conditioned space as well because I have a mini split unit up there.
Oh,
So it has,
I like
it
those.
is conditioned.
I have those.
But I know that I can't expect to. So for example, if I spend a ton of money out there updating it,
Yeah.
that's not a good return on investment because that can't be equated as part of.
Right. An appraiser, a bank appraiser won't give it the full 100%.
Now, if I go in and say I did do a ton of work, could I get that added? Is there a way that I could add that square footage?
You could go,
like remodel it and permit it?
yes. And then they add
And
it.
then it
Yeah.
would be
And then
technically-
your taxes might be higher.
Right, because
Yeah.
they would reassess based on the square footage.
But I like to, if you're living there and you need the space, like do it for you and your family. I'm not always worrying about the future buyer.
No, that makes total sense. And I mean, that's kind of where we're at is like, for me, I'm addressing the things that are important to me and to my family and to make sure that, we're happy while we're here.
Yeah.
And a little bit also kind of sub-planning, I guess, down the road. I'm keeping kind of a little bit more classic country kind of vibe to it as opposed to going ultra modern with the remodel because for one, I don't feel like it fits the area. And for me, if I'm doing work, certainly on the outside, I like to try and take into account what other homes are in the area and what materials those homes use and all that stuff so that it fits kind of the neighborhood as opposed to making this thing that really stands out.
It'll
And
take
maybe
longer to sell if you do that.
It'll take longer to sell if
Yeah.
you kind of make it stand out.
Yeah.
That's an interesting tip
think.
because kind of having a home that kind of fits the area that it's in makes more sense and using the materials that are other, I'm not crazy about just traditional brick overall, but in my backyard, I just did this remodel recently and because brick is so widely used in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
I chose to go with like these brick columns as opposed to maybe one of the more contemporary stacked stone kind of looks.
Do you go into other homes in your neighborhood
We did a lot when
when you were shopping?
when we were shopping.
Yeah.
Because my wife knew she wanted to be in that area.
You should go now too and see what's happening.
In our community, almost all the houses have the same floor plan within the area. So we like to go try to hunt down our original floor plan because we're so confused about what's going on in our house. So like we've slowly pieced together like what exactly is going on.
Yeah, I mean, that works certainly in like certain subdivisions and stuff where, one builder kind of built a
You
bunch
can put
of
it back
homes. You
together.
can kind of piece it back together. It's fun to kind of mess around with that kind of thing and figure out, what the house used to be like. and-
Right. I'd love to go back. Like
yeah,
the day
just
it
kind
was
of roll
built.
it back.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. That would be so cool. Or just see old pictures.
Yeah.
Ours is so confusing.
So you have a downloadable seller's guide
I do on my website.
on your website. So we'll
Yes.
make sure to link to that
Fantastic.
in the show notes so people can check it out. It's
Okay.
got a ton of great information. A lot of the things that we've talked about, the painting, the staging.
Sure, and I
the-
update it as the market changes too.
Yeah.
That's great.
And of course it's, I think there's a lot of information that people can use nationally. It's not just an LA specific thing.
right.
Maybe some of it might be tailored specifically too, but I think by and large, it's very comprehensive of kind of a national sales approach.
I think so.
Again, we'll be sure to link that in the show notes. So as far as resale value goes, in terms of like your bathrooms, do you recommend that people go in and do like full on, remodels of their bathrooms or like change out tile or anything like that? Do you think that money comes back, or do you think they should just clean it?
If they had the budget, I would consider tile. I just, in my 1924 house, it would be a can of worms. So if I pulled out the bath and the shower, I don't know what I'm going to find in the subfloor, insulation, plumbing.
And that's a big issue, right? Because at least in LA, you are obligated to disclose anything you find. If you open the walls up and you find that the subfloor is rotten,
yes,
you have to address that, or you have to disclose that it's not, because now.
You disclose everything. I had a seller once, and it turned into $100,000 job, because then something burst and started leaking to the ground floor, and they couldn't move for an additional year. So
maybe a reglaze. And
reglaze would be great.
grout
Those
cleaning.
are $300. Grout cleaning, maybe bleach. I'm not sure. But clean and fresh, like you went to a nice hotel and you don't want to be grossed out by anything you see in someone's bathroom. And pull out, toiletries. Show space like you would in your closets.
Hardware.
Classic. Not too trendy.
White.
I do see a lot of the higher end homes have staging with white couches. It's okay to have fun too, with a splash of color or plants or pots or a cool piece of art, especially, again, my photography background. I want that in my photos too. I want to get more buyers in there. So you don't have to play it too safe. So with the white box, throw, a huge colorful painting up as well.
I think that's fine, totally fine as staging and stuff, but with kids, nope.
Yep.
Not having a white
You pretend
couch,
you
not
don't have
I don't
kids when
like
you're
white
selling.
great for a photo.
furniture. I like neutral walls, and then I can just put fun stuff on them and change
And then
them.
change them out.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about a pre-inspection.
Yes.
So with plumbing, would you say plumbing isn't a huge deal unless you get that pre-inspection and notice an issue? Otherwise, would you just kind of...
As a seller, it could be a really big expense. So if I do a pre-inspection, at least I know what I'm selling.
Okay.
So I can let them know if there's copper or galvanized, or maybe sewer is a different inspection, but maybe the condition of my sewer. It's just information, and you can just disclose it. So if I hopefully have multiple offers, maybe the set of buyers that doesn't care about the plumbing is my right set of buyers.
Right.
So just information.
Our huge expense moving into our last home was grounding the outlets. Like, we had to do all new electrical. And
you knew that going in?
We did. We
Okay.
didn't know exactly how much it was going to be. And we basically did that first thing when we moved in. And that was our project for the first 6 months.
That's not fun.
No.
Foundations are a big issue here too.
Yeah.
You could do
That's a huge issue.
Yeah.
And I had a home inspection when we first moved in, and the guy said, your home is in great shape. The foundation's in fantastic shape. There's a couple, little cracks here and there that I would suggest you fix, blah, 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 blah. So this is all in the actual, sit down with him after he went through and inspected it. And then he sent off a quote, for the work that it needed. And the two did not match.
what he said and what he showed.
Yeah, what he showed in terms of the quote was thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of repairs. And I hit him up and I said, wait a second. You said that it was in great shape. Well, it is in great shape for the age of the home, and it's very good, but I would recommend this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And I was like,
He's covering his butt.
I'm okay. And I was like, well, I kind of asked the seller and I said, can you meet me kind of a little bit in the middle on this. Like I'm
Did
okay
they?
to look over this. I'm okay to overlook this. Can we just fix a couple of these cracks and things and pin these things? And yeah, they did. Fortunately, they kind of,
That's great. You could also get a second and third opinion.
Yeah. I mean, and I did climb under there myself, and having a little bit of a background, I was like, okay, I know what they're talking about. And these things I can overlook. And some of it was just simple work that's like, because of the house, it's on a raised foundation, but it's not, it doesn't have a basement. Most of the homes out here don't. And so it just has a crawl space. And some of it was like, money just to like keep the soil away from the wood piers or wood columns that are
Termite.
holding up for termite stuff. And
Did you actually do the work? Because I have
I
some
went-
buyers who get the credit and don't do the work.
yes, the
You
work
did.
was done prior to us moving in. So that work
Okay.
that they covered the part that I was concerned about. And I said, okay, can you address these things? And then as part of our like final walkthrough, that work was completed.
And is your house bolted for earthquake?
Yes.
Okay. That's considered an upgrade here.
It is.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Nope. Mandatory?
mandatory, like
No, it's an
strapping your
upgrade.
water tank. and
That's
stuff.
mandatory.
Yeah. So
That's
there's a lot of
retrofitting.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things in LA. I think that certainly I'm from upstate New York originally, so a lot of the stuff is completely different,
It is.
as far as the earthquake things go and the shutoffs on the gas valves and all the stuff that's kind of mandatory here that maybe the rest of the country isn't. But everywhere has its own, rules and things. But I think it's always great to, consult. If you are considering selling your home, people can certainly go find a local realtor.
Yeah,
and
just have a
discuss.
conversation.
Yeah.
Even if you're a year out, at least you can make a priority list on where you want to spend your money, what repairs you want to do, and what you don't want to do.
And things do change over time. So, there's always the timeless things like we're talking about, but, in 2 years from now,
A new trend.
a new trend might come along
The rooms
and
are back.
a realtor might tell you, close that room
Put
off.
that wall back up.
Everybody really wants that wall back up. Put that wall back up. Eileen, thank you so much for being here. I think I've learned
Pleasure.
a ton
This
about
is fun. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're so knowledgeable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love it.
And we'll make sure to link to your seller's guide.
Great. It's
through
on
the
my
show
website.
notes.
There's a big blue button. And I'm on Instagram as well.
Yeah, where can people find you on?
So it's EILEEN'S Real Estate on Instagram.
Okay.
And I do stories. Hopefully we're all familiar with stories every Tuesday and sometimes on Sunday. So I'll actually take you through 6 or 8 properties. It's fun.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. Different areas of LA.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here. We will, like I said, we will link to that seller's guide in our show notes. And if you guys want to follow us on social media, we'll make sure to put the links to that in the show notes as well. And we want to thank Filter By, as always, for being the founding partner of the How To Home podcast. And again, if you guys want to call in and leave us some voicemails, you can do so at 978-709-1040, and we will do our best to incorporate those into the show. And anything else you want to add, Tracy, before we sign off for today?
No, just show some love on our podcast. Like, share, tell your friends about it.
Yeah. Anybody considering selling a home, send this to them so they can get the best information about, maximizing ROI and tips to sell. So thank you guys so much for watching or listening. If you did like this episode, please rate us on your various podcast apps. Hit the like button or whatever, as Tracy said, and consider subscribing and following us in the next episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time. The How To Home podcast is brought to you by FilterBuy.com, your one-stop direct-to-consumer replacement air filter brand, and is produced in collaboration by Amassed Media Group LLC and Intelligent Arts and Artists. The show is executive produced by George Ruiz and Aaron Massey.